Doctor, welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. Is your green light on?
Yes.
Okay, go
Thank you,
ahead.
Chairman Baldwin. Y'all are familiar with me. I'm Renee Hinkle. I am an OBGYN physician here in Cheyenne. I've been in Cheyenne living and working for 24 years and delivered over 2,000 babies in this town. I am in opposition of this bill. I understand I will never change the minds of any of you regarding abortion, and I don't plan to. I am not pro-abortion. I have never done abortions, but I have been taking care of women and doing reproductive women's health for over 30 years. And abortion is part of women's health. It is a health issue as per the American Medical Association, the American College of OBGYN, the World Health Organization, all agree that abortion is an important part of women's reproductive health. And as such, I would ask that this bill not go forward, mainly because the medications that are used for abortion are also used for other things. Mifepristone, which is what they call RU46, which is the abortion pill, has been used and has become the safest form of medicine for an abortion that we have. It's made abortion very safe and effective. And then there are studies now that are being done throughout the country that show that it is a very effective partner with misoprostol, which is the other medication we use for miscarriages. And the two of them together decrease the need for emergency room visits and DNCs and things like that with miscarriages. And so we use those medications for other things. And although the bill says that we can use it for miscarriages, we all know that pharmacists and hospitals and other physicians are not going to want to give that to us because they're not going to be prosecuted. And we've already, even without these bills in place, we've already seen that pharmacists are reluctant to give us misoprostol at times because they don't have a way to know that when we say that there's no heartbeat in this baby, there's no way for them to know that.
15 seconds.
Okay, so I would just request that you not vote yes for this bill, not because I want to change your mind on abortion or not because there are other ways to do it, but because we use those medications for other reasons, and it will drastically affect how we take care of our patients. We use them for inductions of labor. We use them for postpartum hemorrhage to save people from getting transfusions or surgeries. We use them every single day. They're on every single one of our labor and delivery order sheets. So I would very much ask that you not make these drugs illegal, even with the caveat, because pharmacists are not going to give it to us. And it's going to affect the patients, the women of this state.
Thank you, Dr. Hinkle. Just one request, a couple questions. Dr.
Clarification then, as I read this, this is specific for the purpose of causing an abortion, but you're suggesting that perhaps the pharmacies would hold back just in general because this would be in statute.
Correct, they do already. Even just with the abortion ban that is not currently in place right now, the abortion ban that is in a legal dispute at the moment, just because that ban is on the books, even though it's not an active bill right now, they have made us jump through many more hoops pharmacists have in order to get those medications, because they don't want to be prosecuted for giving this medication for a reason when they're not seeing what we have. I mean, we have an ultrasound, we have no heartbeat, we have all those types of things, but they can't see that. We also, when we write orders at the hospital, we have to indicate why we're writing them, whether it's for a miscarriage or for postpartum hemorrhage or something like that. And if you enacted this bill that actually makes them illegal for something, there will be pharmacists who just refuse to do it. And we will not be able to get those medications that we use every single day and save people from surgeries and transfusions and emergency room visits and all these types of things. I mean, we use misoprostol every single day, either for miscarriage or for induction of labor or for postpartum hemorrhage, every single day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions for Dr. Hinkle? No questions. Can I get you to tutor Senator Salazar in how to pronounce the drugs?
I will.
Okay, very good. Okay, go ahead, ma'am. Introduce yourself and go ahead and talk with us.
Good morning, Chairman Baldwin and committee members. My name is Wendy Volk. I'm from here in Cheyenne. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 daughters, and we've been here for 5 generations and proud to be here. I'm speaking in opposition to File 109. As a woman and a Republican, I cannot sit silently considering the impact of the proposed legislation. I want abortion to be a legal, safe, and accessible option here in Wyoming. And I fear this bill moves us in the other direction, forcing women with means to travel out of state and those struggling economically to resort to potentially dangerous options. I'd like to share a story and a photo with you. It is graphic, and I want to warn you of that. This is a photo of a woman that I'll never be able to forget. I saw it for the first time as a young woman myself. This woman is a dead woman. She's dead. She's nude, face down with her knees bent, surrounded by her own blood. She was a victim of a botched illegal abortion performed in a sordid hotel room in Connecticut. Her name was Geraldine Santoro. She was 28 years old and a mother of 2 daughters. She died because she did not have the option of a legal abortion. It was 59 years ago. She needed it because she was afraid of her abusive, estranged husband's reaction to her pregnancy. She died trying to terminate a dangerous pregnancy in the dark days before abortion was legal. She was one of countless women who died in this lonely and desperate way. We do not want to see those times ever return here in Wyoming or in the United States. Far too long, these stories have gone untold and forgotten. These are someone's sister, daughter, mother, or friend. It is estimated that over 1.2 million abortions were, or illegal abortion, 1.2 million women in the US died of illegal abortions prior to 1973. We must bring these stories back so that people will remember how important a choice is. We must remember her and not let her memory be forgotten. It is important to remember the majority of Americans support safe and legal abortion. We must remember that what our country looks like without safe and legal abortion. The proposed bill for prohibiting chemical abortions is a reminder of the pain, suffering, and cruelty to women before 1973. Please protect the liberty and equality of Wyoming
15
women and
seconds.
girls. It is imperative we respect a woman and her autonomous being and grant her full equality in giving her substantial choice over this personal and most consequential of her life decisions. Please vote no.
Questions for Ms. Volk? I apologize for my cough. I'm working on it. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for coming and presenting today. So 2 people who are opposed to the bill to replace those seats. Okay, so I need somebody else that's in support of the bill to come forward. Ma'am, you're in support, I believe. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Robin Goodspeed. I am a private citizen, a voter, been a resident here in Cheyenne for a number of years. I am here because I am a former lesbian and a former atheist who, praise God, was delivered from those lives, those choices, by the grace of God and the power of Jesus Christ. However, in my former lesbian life, my former atheist life, I was faced with pregnancy years ago. And at that time, I was, as I said, a lesbian and an atheist, but even then, I knew that if I aborted that pregnancy, I was going to be killing my child. I was going to be murdering my baby. And even then, at that time, I made up my mind that I was going to have that baby and I was going to give it up for adoption because I did not want to be a parent. However, God had other plans and I did not have to walk down that road and I did not have that baby. But in my lesbian life and in my life now as a saved Christian woman, I have talked to many women who have made that choice, and they have struggled with all of the natural consequences of making that choice. They have struggled with grief, with guilt, with shame, with depression, with suicide, and there are deaths because of women not being able to bear the guilt for killing their children. I encourage you to vote yes for this bill and to ban this chemical abortion, which makes it easier for another generation of young women to follow that same horrible path. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions for the testifier? Thank you very much for coming. Deacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Deacon Mike Lehman, and I'm representing the Catholic Diocese of Cheyenne, and I speak this morning in support of the legal protection of the unborn. We oppose the direct and intentional taking of all human life and also we're against the loss of life that comes from willful neglect, why we support access to healthcare. I'd submit that if the unborn are not human and/or are not alive, the debate over the issue has largely been a waste of time. But the development of science and technology these last 50 years clearly indicate otherwise. Last night, I sent the committee a link to a 2013 story of a young man named Nick who survived an attempted abortion. Now, he's missing fingers on his hands and parts of both of his legs. I once showed his story to a person who said that the real problem was that the abortionist wasn't proficient enough. I don't think she realized how her statement was going to sound before she said that. I have other friends who think it should be legal before viability. But our responsibility, we know this, for protecting others does not decrease the smaller and more dependent people become. We know our responsibility to protect our grown children is less than is required for the protection of our teenagers. Our protection of our teenagers is less than our need to protect our toddlers. Intuitively, we understand that the smaller and more dependent someone is, the more vigilant we must be in defending their lives. That intuition exists in our hearts and minds, but is absent in Wyoming law when it comes to the most small unborn. I suggested to the committee that Nick's missing appendages in some way represent the mass of missing humanity these last 50 years, with all of its diversity and beauty, but his spirit, Nick's spirit, and determination that drove him into sports like football and wrestling represent the human spirit, which can live and learn and which can move forward with courage. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for your consideration and for your service to the people of Wyoming.
Thank you very much. Questions for Deacon? Thank you very much for coming up. I'll have you two switch seats with, find two other people that are in support. Ladies, choose who is first or arm wrestle or whatever you choose to do there. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Christina Gonzalez, and I'm a registered nurse and trained sexual assault nurse examiner in the state of Wyoming. I am vehemently opposed to SF 109 as this bill neglects to consider the myriad of medical conditions, treatment options, and sound medical advice with regards to sexual assault patients. The sexual assault exception written into this bill assumes that reporting an assault is available to all victims, thus ignoring those in a community where justice for such crimes is unattainable. For 5 years, I worked on the Wind River Reservation, where I provided sexual assault exams for enrolled tribal members. In many instances, my patients would come in either moments after the assault or within days of being assaulted. Some sexual assault patients were in such a state of shock they often had not showered, eaten, or removed the clothes they were assaulted in. They were despondent and were resolved that justice would not be served. The first exam I performed involved a patient who was assaulted in the late hours of a Thursday evening, which went into the early morning hours of Friday. She was repeatedly assaulted by a man she knew and then by his relatives. At the first possible moment, she escaped the house and returned to where her 4-year-old daughter was staying with her sister and their mother. At the urging of both her mother and sister, the patient contacted the Victims Advocate Unit. And this part does have a little bit of graphic, so trigger warning for anyone who has experienced sexual assault. Upon exam, she was missing chunks of hair. Her neck had bruising indicative of being held down or possibly strangled. She had bruising under one eye and scratches along the opposite cheek. She had broken nails from fighting off her attackers, bruises, and bite marks along her abdomen and inner thighs. And I will spare you the details of how her genitalia had been violated. Per our protocol, I provided her with antibiotics, collected laboratory samples for STDs, HIV, and baseline pregnancy analysis. She feared retaliation not only from her assailants, but their families. She feared for the safety of herself, her child, and for her family members. Making a police report was not an option for her. I repeat, making a police report was not making a police report of a sexual assault was not an option. Now I ask you to consider the story of this woman whose recourse for justice felt unattainable. A 2020 report from the DOJ states 310 out of 1,000 sexual assaults go unreported, and this story is just one of 310 unreported sexual assaults. I'm a registered nurse for the state of Wyoming, and my primary duty is to treat, advocate, and protect my patients. This responsibility includes educating, advising, and counseling all medical treatment options available in my patient population. This bill as written and presented infringes on my duties and responsibilities I owe the victims of sexual assault.
Questions, Senator Dockstader?
Thank you for your work as a nurse. Clarification, why is the police report not an option? Is it the culture? What am I not understanding here?
Christine, go ahead.
In some tribal communities, and especially on a close one like the Wind River Reservation, there's often connections between different families. It's very close-knit, and there's often some knowing of the assailant to the victim, whether or not they know them or most, and I'm sorry I don't have an exact number, but there is a high number of sexual assault victims. They know their assailants. It's not the boogeyman jumping out of the bush. In the case of my community, there are a number of victims who know their assailant, whether it be a relative, an intimate partner, or someone they know from around the neighborhood. And that, unfortunately, and that culture and that community, retaliation is sought against when you have smeared someone's name. And so for this individual and for many individuals that I have treated for sexual assault or domestic violence, they are unable and feel unempowered to make police reports because of the fear of retaliation, from being ostracized, and from the violence that could come from their family, from the assailant's family to their family.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for listening to me today. My name is Dr. Lauren Millett, and I am here today as a Wyoming citizen and as a physician to testify in opposition and respectfully urge you to oppose Senate File 109. I was born and raised on a cattle ranch in Newcastle, Wyoming, and was fortunate enough to go through the WWAMI program and will be forever grateful for the support from this legislature towards me becoming a physician. I am now an OBGYN, having spent the last 14 years in education and training. I tell you this because physicians are dedicated to providing evidence-based care to our patients. As a WWAMI graduate and Wyoming native, I would like nothing more than to return to my home state and provide care for the women of Wyoming. However, restrictive laws such as Senate File 109, which would criminalize physicians such as myself for practicing within the accepted standard of medical care within the scope of our training, make it nearly impossible to do so. Speaking to abortion in general, abortion is a safe medical intervention and is essential health care that improves the lives, health, and well-being of those who need it. Medication abortion is a safe and effective evidence-based regimen. Medical decisions are personal, and Wyoming places high value on the protection of an individual's autonomy. Passing Senate File 109 is in direct opposition to this belief and effectively denies the people of Wyoming their bodily autonomy, which violates long-established medical ethics. Restrictive laws such as Senate File 109 place physicians in an ethical dilemma, forcing us to choose between our obligation and oath to provide safe, evidence-based medicine to our patients and substantial legal, and in the case of Senate File 109, criminal penalties. By passing Senate File 109, this legislature would be inappropriately taking sides on a medical issue with no evidence-based justification and controlling how physicians care for our patients, counter to the recommendations of medical experts, including the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. In closing, Wyoming state laws should not criminalize physicians for practicing within the accepted standard of medical care and within the scope of our training for our specialty. I respectfully urge you to oppose Senate File 109. I would like to thank the members of this committee for taking the time to listen to my testimony today.
Thank you, Doctor. Questions, Senator Dockstader?
Thank you, Doctor. Is it your thought too, and you didn't touch on this, we used the word criminalization. I'm not sure that we're criminalizing the doctor, but your thoughts on if we deal with these specific drugs, that it will cause pharmacists concerns for filling those prescription orders? What do you see a ripple effect out there that, like our previous OBGYN, that could
Go ahead, Doctor.
reach problems? And then, really quick, you'd
go ahead.
return to Wyoming as a doctor? That's a closing thought, but anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Senator Dockstader, I agree with my colleague's previous statements. Making these drugs illegal, we've already seen that with contraception and other forms, makes pharmacists difficult for them to provide them. And as she mentioned, these are medications that we use not only for abortion, that's a small part of what we use them for. And yes, I would love to return to Wyoming and be able to provide care for the women here.
Thank you.
Further questions? My voice is fading. Thank you very much, ladies. Okay, so trade your seats with two more people who are opposed. Gentlemen, introduce yourselves. You choose who's first.
Mr. Chairman, Members of the committee, good morning. My name is Michael Barrow, and I am a Wyoming State Action Captain for Students for Life of America. I'm also the president of Cowboys for Life, the Students for Life group at Wyoming Catholic College in Lander, where I am a student. I'm here today to join my voice to many others in support of Senate File 109. This legislation would ban the distribution and use of dangerous and deadly chemical abortion pills and protect vulnerable women. Around 40% of the children who die by abortion in America are killed by chemical abortion pills. And chemical abortion is 4 times more dangerous for women than surgical abortion. These drugs can expose women to a laundry list of severe side effects, including abnormal bleeding months after taking the abortion pill and infertility. Students for Life recently conducted a survey that found that 9 in 10 people in my generation oppose the current no testing online distribution of chemical abortion pills. The abortion lobby will try to use chemical abortion pills to circumvent future abortion bans in the state of Wyoming, and this law will stop that from ever happening. We ask you to stand with those women and stand up for them and the children who die from abortion each year in Wyoming. It's time for our generation to set an example to other states by ending the evil of abortion, and it's time that we set an example by protecting women and safeguarding the next generation of Wyomingites. Thank you.
Questions, committee? I have one quick question. This would apply to anybody else that testifies, either pro or against. You gave us the statistics of the chemical abortion being 4 times more deadly. Where does that come from exactly? Can you quote that to us? I think that's important.
I believe the 4 times statistic comes from Students for Life has quoted it, but I'm afraid I don't know the exact medical research board that provided that.
Thank you very much. I would emphasize the importance. If you're going to give us statistics and things like that, try to tell us where they came from, because it is important.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, for your audience. My name is Andy Swallow. I am a student and a proud resident of Laramie, Wyoming. As Treasury Officer of SFL-UW, so Students for Life at the University of Wyoming, we are on the front lines of those young women who are being offered, pressured, and receiving these abortion pills. Last semester, ASUW, the student government of UW, sought a proposition to advertise and provide abortion pills to young women who were seeking them. Now, support of SF 109 is just the beginning. We have to make a concerted effort to support the other correct choices of either adoption or raising the unborn children themselves for these women. And when we look at these pressure tactics that are often being used by the pro-choice groups on campus, often unorganized but very sophisticated, whether it's through social media or through the direct channels with the student government, we have to keep in mind that these women often are in a place of desperation. Often they're hundreds of miles from their home state, away from their parents, their other relatives, their friends. It's obviously a very personal decision, and there's obviously a lot of intricacies involved with individual cases, but we have to look not only at the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. Do we want to decide to be a state where we only choose the choices that will be the least amount of effort for all of the parties involved, the ones that will sacrifice human life for the sake of our own convenience or our own safety, perhaps? Or do we choose a moral decision? Do we choose a decision to be spiritually enriching, not only by taking care of the women involved in these very difficult decisions of choosing between the pill or a medical abortion or otherwise, and also for the long-term care and protection of the children? With that, I will yield back.
Questions for Andy? Thank you very much for coming and your thoughts. So trade your seats with 2 who are in not opposition. This is the opposition in support. Go ahead and fill those 2 seats. You'll be next up after. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Dr. Larry Miley, and I'm a board-certified pediatrician who trained at Children's Hospital in Denver. In the past, I've also been head of the State Health Department for 4.5 years and presented the budget to the Joint Appropriations Committee for 4 years. I'm also, I was recruited to come to Wyoming as a medical director of what was called the Improved Pregnancy Outcome Program. And just as an aside, I did visit every hospital in Wyoming that did deliver babies. When I was the head of the health department, we did computerize the Medicaid program so that now you have some statistics to go over things. I'm going to take this from kind of a broad perspective. I've been impressed by the legislature thinking how important families are, and that families are the ones that should be making decisions regarding what the family should do. And I know it's been thought that families should have the decision about whether they have their children immunized or not, and also whether they should wear masks, et cetera. The thing that I find interesting is if families are important in making decisions, why is it that families that are trying to make decisions regarding the size of their family, whether they can nurture and afford children, why that no longer is a family decision, but that becomes a legislative decision by elected people in the family. So anyway, I am opposed to this because I think that to take away the family's prerogative to make decisions regarding how many children they can care for and nurture and afford should be their decision.
15 seconds. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, let me finish up with what I think will happen with this one. And I know this bill will pass, and I appreciate you letting us give our opinions here. But my prediction is that there'll be a lot of mail order prescriptions. There will be an increase in the infant mortality rates in the state of Wyoming, and it'll be very difficult to recruit physicians to the state of Wyoming, particularly physicians that are thinking about that would be doing obstetrics.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions for the
thank
doctor?
you.
Go ahead, Senator Dockstader.
Someone can obtain this through the mail without a doctor's prescription?
Beg pardon?
Someone can obtain this through the mail without a doctor's prescription?
Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead,
through
Doctor.
you to Senator Dockstader. I think as time goes on, that there'll be a way that individuals who want these medications will go outside of the usual way to get prescriptions. And I think we'll find that there will be ways of getting these pills. You just heard testimony about how people at the University of Wyoming are able to get these pills. I think it'll be interesting to see how that happens. And I do think that once families are unable to determine how many children they want, that we're going to see the infant mortality rates go up. And when I came to Wyoming, we, as medical director, the infant mortality rates in Wyoming were horrendous. In the 60s and 70s, Wyoming in many cases, led the nation in infant mortality rates. And our program was to turn that around, and we did. And for those 20 years, there was 3 years when Wyoming was better than the national statistics as far as infant mortality rates were concerned. After our program, during our program, and following our program, we were always better than the national statistics as far as low infant mortality rates. And I think that's because we spent a lot of time going around the state teaching OB and neonatal nurses the importance of keeping babies warm, pink, and active and sweet. Warm, sweet.
In that order, correct?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Doctor, for your testimony. Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. My name is Nikki Kaufman. I am 32 years old. I am very lucky to be engaged recently to a born and raised Wyomingite wildland firefighter, wonderful man, which makes me, for the first time, really want to start a family and have children. I'm very excited about that, but candidly, I'm also terrified. And not just at the idea of raising a tiny human, which also sounds both joyful and very scary, but I'm really excited. I want to be a mother. I think we would be great parents. I'm scared because of the number of women my age who have found themselves in the very heartbreaking situation of having a miscarriage. Many of my friends have experienced my age, a few years older, 1 to 2 miscarriages at this point. And as you probably know, and I'm grateful for Dr. Hinkle for talking about this, a miscarriage sometimes completes on its own, and other times problems occur when the uterus does not completely empty and medical attention is needed to prevent life-threatening situations. That is so scary to me, living in a rural state where my medical provider could be 8 to 10 hours away who would be able to prescribe a drug like this. And I know, of course, in the bill, chemical abortions would be deemed legal in cases where the pregnant woman's life is in physical danger. But as we've heard from several people who have already testified, physicians and doctors are already scared, and we haven't even passed this bill. We've heard situations like this in Texas where pharmacists will not prescribe this medication for miscarriages out of fear of going to jail. So it's not cut and dry. And as we continue to see young people flee the state for places with healthcare policies that make them feel seen and heard and wanting to raise a family here, I would urge you to oppose this bill so that we can keep people excited to have those opportunities and be part of this incredible state. So I respectfully urge you to vote no on this bill, and I really, truly appreciate you all listening to all the testimony today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Any questions for Nikki, committee? Thank you very much. We'll let you guys trade your seats. Go ahead, whoever wants to be first there. We won't make you arm wrestle, just you choose.
There we go. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Gary Brown. I'm from Cheyenne. I'm a father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. This is very personal with me. When I was in my late 20s, I married my second wife. Did not know that she was in favor of abortions. After becoming pregnant, without my permission, of course, and against my choices, she aborted my child. I left her, and within a few days, she came to me and begged me to come back, promising me she would never do that again. A few months later, she came to me, told me she was pregnant, and despite my wishes, she was going to get an abortion again. This is something that has stuck with me my entire life. 2 of my children have been destroyed. This hurts today. I know that everybody says this is a woman's right, this is a woman's choice. But fathers are destroyed through abortion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have trouble with the green light as well. Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions, committee?
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Mara McManaman, 4th generation Wyomingite from Goshen County in Torrington, Wyoming. I want to begin by stating that I found the article that was referenced earlier. It is from pubmed.gov. It is a study that was conducted, and I have the results here, if I may approach. Okay, basically, really quick, it says the overall incidence of adverse effects was 4-fold higher in the medical compared with surgical abortion cohort. So it talks about hemorrhaging and all of those things, but I'd like to stick to my testimony here.
Go ahead.
I am in support of this bill 100%. I would like to urge each and every one of you to vote aye. As Secretary of State Chuck Gray said in the Right to Life March, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, but Wyoming could become a sanctuary state to the unborn. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Questions, committee? Thank you very much for the testimony, for traveling down here to give testimony.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I have support. Now I need 2 opposition. You're in the wrong seat. Former representative, we should know better. So anybody else that's in opposition, please come up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, chairmen of the committee. I come to you as a hardworking college student from Wyoming, coming from a ranching family of nearly 6 generations. I was born and raised in Cheyenne with the values of coming from the equality state. I have a dream of becoming a parent and a lawyer who hopes to run for office someday. And I look to you as the representatives I elected as role models who I hope to emulate in the future. I am against this bill, and I urge you to listen as to why you should vote no. I know many in our community and even in this room are parents, and I know after speaking to my parents that taking on the lifelong responsibility of parenthood is a Herculean task. I hope to someday be a parent, and I want my child to have the right to life, but I want them to have the right to a quality of life. You see, I'm a full-time student working several jobs and athletics at the university. I would be unable to sustain my current path towards my career if I had to become a mother right now. I wish only to have the equal opportunity in Wyoming to complete my education just like my male peers who do not have to worry about the physical toll of becoming pregnant or giving up their education to become a full-time parent. Please let me, as a student and young person of Wyoming, have an equal opportunity to finish my law degree so I can support my family later in life. In Wyoming, we desperately need young people to stay here and become the next generation of leaders. But what message are we sending when our government unequally and disproportionately decides the trajectory of women's lives for them? Young women should have the liberty to pursue their education and their career without government say-so, just as they should have the freedom to choose when, how, and with whom they become a parent. This will make a better Wyoming, giving young people the access and opportunity to decide when and with whom they can provide their child with the best quality of life. Before you vote today, I beg you to consider how you are driving our young people away from this state. We want to have opportunities, and we want to have the agency when it comes to being able to decide our futures, our lives, and our individual paths to parenthood. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would ask you, I perhaps missed your introduction. Can you tell us your name again?
Grace DeReamer.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Dreamer. Any questions, committee? Hearing none. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Baldwin, members of the committee. My name is Greg Hunter from Laramie, Wyoming. And I want to tell you something I learned when I was working on a thoroughbred horse farm, is that if you have a good vet, you don't need a doctor. So any drug that you could give to a horse, xylazine, the date rape drug, ketamine, ivermectin, for instance, a human could take. Just you have to have the right dose. And these particular drugs that you're banning are used by the veterinary community to do a lot of work on horses. So my understanding is, if I've watched this committee in the past, that veterinarians were exempted from reporting on the drug use that they inject into the community compared to, say, physicians and pharmacists. So I think we're going to have to probably clean that issue up, or we could decide as legislature and as humans that we would accept our constitutional values and not start injecting, really Stone Age religious beliefs into our laws. So I'm opposed to this bill, and I think there's going to have a lot of consequences when you ban these drugs. And just as the other doctor said, humans, just like the drug war, it never worked. We're going to find a way, and you're going to criminalize a lot of people and drive a lot of people away. So I'm opposed to this bill, and I think you should vote it down. Thank you very much.
Questions, committee? Hearing none, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
testifying. Okay, we'll move to the gentleman who was in the wrong seat. Two more people who are opposed can please come forward if you're here. Go ahead, Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, my name is Nathan Winters, President of the Wyoming Family Alliance. What I want to do is just provide you with the statistics people have been citing. I want to give you the original sources, and I'll follow up by emailing this to you. This was a meta-analysis that was taken by the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and much of their work comes from the Obstet Gynecol journal for obstetricians. And they are the ones that have been able to demonstrate that chemical abortions have a complication rate 4 times that of surgical abortion, and as many as 1 out of 5 women will suffer complication. Following that, 3 to 7 out of every 100 women who choose chemical abortion early in pregnancy will need follow-up care to finish that abortion, with as many as 7 to 10 needing follow-up care for chemical abortions in the first trimester after 63 days of pregnancy, and up to 39% requiring surgery if accidentally taken in the second trimester. With that, obviously there have been some individuals opposed to this particular bill that have pointed out that they need the ability to be distant from a hospital and potentially take this kind of medicine, when the statistics would say that is extremely dangerous. That's the reason why these kind of chemicals need to be something that is very carefully looked at. And that's why I'm also for this particular bill. I think it's important not only for the health of the child in the womb, but also for the mother as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Nathan? Hearing none, go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Tom Jacobson, as an individual citizen of a fine state of Wyoming. Chairman Baldwin, senators, I'll keep this short because I think this debate really can be boiled down to one thing. And however you frame the argument in the abortion debate, in the final analysis, it's taking a life. A life that was given to a child through God, as I believe, and most of us probably would concur with that. I don't see that having a right to take that life furthers anything within our society unless there are extenuating circumstances regarding a mother's health, etc. You know, I was graduated from high school at Central in 1976. It was a very poignant time because I remember too that was when the whole abortion debate came up and abortion was legalized. As I recall then, and this has been a few years ago, but I had heard the statistics that there had been some 1 million women who had died of illegal abortions at that time. And that was probably the justification for trying to keep these laws in place to give a person the right to go abort. Well, as time went on, I looked at that and I thought, you know, there is no justification with that simply because if in fact there's been 1 million women who have died from an illegal abortion, since that point in time, I believe there's been roughly 53 million who've had abortion in the United States since it became legal. So yeah, I don't think the debate is complicated. Abortion by and large has been used as a contraceptive, and it doesn't take into account the right of the baby. You know, ultimately we hear about the woman's right, the man's right, whoever's right. The person who's never been asked, who can never reply, is in the womb. And how do you balance that out? I mean, so I guess I've noticed that with the pro-abortion folks, you know, they've been born. And so ultimately, where does that stand? Where is the equality with that? So the debate in my mind is short. It is simply short. Life is life. You take it. It's simply a termination of life. And it's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, committee? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for coming and testifying. Okay. Go ahead, ma'am. Introduce yourself and go ahead and speak to the committee.
Dr. Sarah Gregory. I was born in Gillette, Wyoming, graduated from Campbell County High School, educated by the University of Wyoming, and I thank the Wyoming taxpayers for the hundreds of thousands of dollars they've invested in my education through the WWAMI program. and through my undergrad. And I feel like Wyoming has invested in me to become educated in the practice of medicine. And I think that one of the struggles I see in this legislative debate regarding abortion is lack of understanding of medicine. These bills being driven by lay individuals without consulting those practicing medicine. I mean, if we speak at all, the lay term is miscarriage. In medicine, we never use the term miscarriage. All loss of pregnancy, but prior to 20 weeks, is an abortion, cut and dried. But there's a lot of gray matter in discussion. What about a fetus with a heartbeat and a dilated cervix? That's called an inevitable abortion. That woman may chronically bleed, maybe not to death, but where do I draw that line? Do I draw it when she's tachycardic and I send her to the ED for a transfusion? Do I draw that line when I'm actively having to operate on her, when I'm sending her to the ICU? I mean, these are medical decision-making processes that I sit with these women, inevitably in my office with loss of pregnancy. 1 in 3 pregnancies ends in miscarriage. In spontaneous abortion, that's the medical term for miscarriage. But there's also those in-betweens, like inevitable abortion. And I think the lack of understanding is spoken to by the general public and this bill. That takes away kind of the liberty and autonomy of physicians, of me having that discussion with my patient in my office, of determining if it is a therapeutic abortion, if I'm offering her a chemical option, so which is safe up to 70 days of pregnancy. And a significantly safer option if she chooses to want to do that at home with her husband, whether it is a spontaneous abortion, a missed abortion, that means a fetus without a heartbeat within the uterus, that I would treat exactly the same way as I would a therapeutic abortion for a patient who had undesired pregnancy. And so in counseling patients, it's very similar, but I offer each and every one of my patients in my office the option between medical management, surgical management, which comes with its own set of risks, and management of abortion types with at home, allowing them to pass spontaneously. And again, that's the woman's choice that I have with her in my office to allow her the autonomy of her body to make that decision.
15 seconds if you want to wrap it up.
So I speak to this group against this bill to support, I think, the practice of physicians within Wyoming to care for the women of Wyoming.
Thank you very much. I feel so much like the Grinch up here telling people 15 seconds. I am the Grinch, it's true. Questions for the doctor committee? No questions. Go ahead, sir, introduce yourself.
Excuse me, Chairman, Senators, and thank you, Dr. Gregory. I'm Dr. Austin Barnes. I'm from, well, born in Colorado, just down the road in Greeley. Raised all of my life in Nebraska and then went to Texas for residency and now come to find Cheyenne my home and hope to have it as my home for quite some time because it is a great community. Okay, I think highly of Wyoming, I think highly of Nebraska, and I like Colorado for its reasons as well. Okay, but coming from Texas, I can give you examples of some of the things that our own doctors have said. I had a patient who got Cytotec, which is one of these pills that we're speaking of. She thought she was only several weeks pregnant. It came over the border in the mail from Mexico. She was 30 weeks pregnant. So she started taking the pills, caused her to have an abortion, but she was 30 weeks pregnant. So she delivered a baby at home that nearly died as a result of her still being able to get these meds that she wasn't able to otherwise legally get because we were out in the middle of nowhere. The closest access to abortion clinic at my area was 4 hours away. It was still legal at that time, okay? But since the most recent enactments down there, it does not become. Now, to the second point that pharmacists will have problems with this drug, it's not only a problem of legality, but it's also a question of what are their values? What is their background? If they have religious qualms or ethical qualms with abortion, then they often will refuse to give this drug regardless, okay? Now, a third little snippet I will put in here, and I don't have, and this is the reason I had to apologize to you earlier, I'm 24 hours now, 26 hours post-call. from delivering 3 babies last night via C-section, which were very urgent, emergent C-sections, each one of them. And with each pregnancy that you have at full-term delivery, your risk of dying is still higher than with a miscarriage or having a cytotech abortion. So I thank you for listening to me, but that is anecdotal truth as well.
Thank you, Doctor. Questions? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doctor, thank you for coming. You practiced in Texas. I'm assuming they had this similar law. And you're saying they had that problem of, even though we have specific wording, eliminating these drugs causing abortion, they had the cultural problem as well as what do we do? What do we do with this? This is, some just won't do it because, I take it you said because of their own values, but are there other matters?
I encountered more.
Please speak through the chair when you speak.
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to direct it at
No,
any one
you're fine.
person, just post-call and delirious at this point, excuse me. But it was more a religious sort of exemption that they qualified them not wanting to prescribe this pill for. Meanwhile, I was having a patient bleed significantly out as she was trying to legally have this miscarriage, essentially.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We hear these cases that have been brought, but almost 90% of the answers when women were surveyed, these issues that you mentioned aren't in the bulk of that 90%. It's, not ready for a child, can't afford it, have other people depending on me. I have grown children, done with childbearing. Don't want another child. Don't feel mature enough to raise a child. Would interfere with my education plans. Would disrupt career plans. Those are 90% of the answers. And it was troubling to me to hear the opposition to a doctor that has religious beliefs. Do they not have the liberty to have those beliefs as well? I mean, so I mean, given the testimony on the minor percentage, when this bill is directed at the 90% that are using this for contraception, that's where what's your response to that?
I'd respond that that's 90% of women who aren't healthcare providers who have to do this for their patients every day.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Now, before we do a whole bunch further here, realize that we're now an hour and 5 minutes into this. So we'd like to get as many people as we can get to testify. But if you've heard it and you've heard that opinion, get up and be brief, but certainly we'll let you come up if you need to come up. So next we would hear those in support of the bill. Go ahead, Sue.
Good morning, Chairman Baldwin, Senators Committees. My name is Steve Amelia. I'm a resident of Cheyenne. I have a master's in public health, been there for 30 years, City of Houston Health Department, and 20 years with the Wyoming Department of Health. Did a lot with sexually transmitted diseases where I had to locate these patients, get them in for treatment. And I bring that up for a few reasons. Number one, I support this bill, and that's just a background. I support the bill. I have a wife and 3 daughters. They've all had children, except one of them. This is a chemical abortion. It's a chemical, and that drug kills the child. I checked on the website of choice.com, CHOIX. I believe I emailed that website to you. As I read the website, the manufacturer stated that this drug is safe and effective. Definitely, it is effective. But it implied that the procedure was, as I read it, simple and easy. Take the pill and, you pass the tissue and that sort of stuff. However, in further reading from the choice.com website, it illustrated that the women and the baby, but the woman goes through horrific pain and trauma for hours, days, even weeks, with massive bleeding, clots, cramps, and pain. It's anything but simple and easy, though it is effective. Still kills a child. First, we dehumanize the child by calling it a fetus. Well, fetus is Latin for baby, but we sort of say that, well, it's a fetus, therefore it's an inanimate object. And in the Choice website, they call it passing the pregnancy tissue. I'm going, that sounds like a Kleenex tissue, just tissue is non-viable and that sort of stuff, and they just pass it. So it's a drug, it's effective, et cetera, though it's not as simple and easy as one would imagine. Now, I'd like to touch on men for a second. Men, how do women get pregnant? I think it's because of us. And I think that men need to be responsible, a whole lot more responsible. And we should not be having sex and getting a woman pregnant unless we are dedicated and ready to commit to that woman, to the child that we have helped create, and be totally dedicated to that woman to help care for her in every way possible, etc.
15 seconds, sir.
Okay. Men must respect life, especially children and women both. Sex is not recreational pastime or by design toys, and we need to be more responsible to that woman, start to finish, and not just get them pregnant and walk away.
Thank you. Questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming and testifying. Welcome, sir. I think we all know you, but introduce yourself anyway in case we forgot. You got 2 minutes, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is John B. Romero Martinez, and today I'm with the Knights of Columbus, like Steve, who just gave testimony, and I just want to urge the committee to support this bill. And further, I'm going to ask for unanimous support on this bill. I wanted to give a couple of sources that are helpful to the committee. I think one was already given to you. You probably already have this, so if it's redundant, please. For statistics that are being used is for chemical abortion specifically, it would be studentsforlife.org/learn/chemical-abortion. And they give not only those statistics about 4 times more harmful, they give you breakdowns per study. I spoke with a stakeholder last night who is also a member of Students for Life, and I asked her what her concerns were. And she indicated to me they're very concerned about how if the pharmacies do act on this and start letting this new form of abortion and abortifacient out, that sex trafficking and the ability to continue to exploit, use women will exacerbate. And I think we're seeing that as a problem already. So CVC and Walgreens do that. Students for Life, Knights of Columbus, and a host of us are prepared to boycott those organizations without hesitation. That source, I also have another source for you, just for that as we go down the road and hoping for passage through both sides. The Charlotte, if you'll give me a moment, I don't really need to say too much. I just want to get this source document to you. Dr. Ingrid Skopp, medical doctor of the Charlotte Lozer Institute, yesterday night just addressed a senior fellow and director of medical affairs, was talking about the erroneous study published by the Commonwealth Institute. So I just wanted to give those 2 pieces of study. Again, urge support of this bill, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Questions, committee? Seeing none. Mr. Whitney, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. At the risk of, I guess, being labeled as somebody that happens to believe in Stone Age religious beliefs that was mentioned earlier, I bring to you what I think is the core of the issue for you. The courts have a way, their bureaucracy in a lot of ways, and they handle tough decisions by defining it away. And so I would offer you that we in this nation believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I would ask you, when does that attach to the embryo or the fetus or the baby or the infant? And when does the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of the mother override that of the embryo or fetus or baby? And I think the only real answer is you have to look into your heart to find that. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Sheila Bush with the Wyoming Medical Society. I will be brief. I did want to respond to something that was mentioned earlier in terms of quantity of emails you might be receiving. It's okay. Or information. The Medical Society represents close to 60% of Wyoming physicians. We have a fairly diligent process that we use to come to positions on bills. We oppose this bill. When our board debated the bill, it was not about elective abortion or contraception. In fact, that's rarely what they wanted to talk about. What they want to talk about are the things that you heard from the physicians today. And so I understand that you've gotten a lot of emails from constituents talking about what this bill means in their personal lives. I'm here to represent the physicians and what this means in the medical practice in the state and their ability to care for women and the dramatic impact that this will have on women's health. As you heard from multiple physicians, they use these medications daily. They use them to save lives. They use them to save families staying together. And this will undoubtedly impact that in an incredibly negative way. We deeply respect the different opinions on this bill. We recognize it's very emotional. I will tell you that the bulk of my board is pro-life. They have very strong feelings that way, and they unanimously want to oppose this bill for the reasons that you heard that have nothing to do with contraception or elective abortion and have everything to do with their ability to practice medicine and save people's lives. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. This vote, it's a board vote or it's all of the membership of the society? Is it an open vote or a closed vote?
Ms. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, the Medical Society elects a trustee from each county. Each county has a medical society. They elect someone to our board. And so we reflect the opinions of our members through those county trustees who sit on the board. We also have a second mechanism by which we can get the opinion of all of our members through an electronic opinion gathering platform. And so we do our very best to really understand how our physicians feel. And when we talk about criminalization of physicians, and we talk about the legislature getting involved in the very prescribing of which medications might be available to them, the debate on elective abortion takes a deep second seat to their ability to practice medicine and save people's lives.
Thank you. Quick follow-up.
Go ahead, follow up.
Open or closed vote?
Open or closed vote?
Open or closed? At the board, it's an open vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
On the record then, it's a public vote?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, our board meetings are open to any member of the medical society. So they can be at the meeting, they can watch the meeting, they can tune in via Zoom if they'd like. If any member of our board wanted a closed vote, they can always ask for that. We haven't had that request. So it's an open vote and anyone can see it, yes.
Anyone, okay, thank you.
Because you're asking, we don't do a roll call of our board unless it's a divided vote. And so someone makes a motion, the motion is seconded, and then they call for the ayes and the noes. We only take names of who voted aye or no if there's a division.
And a clarification, this is not a public board. This is a society rather than a board. So it's not open to public view per se.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? No, thank you very much. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, Chairman, Senators. My name is Betsy Fitzsimmons. I'm an average homemaker. I've been listening carefully to all of this, and I wish to just state that abortificants have been around since the dawn of time. Women have sought them. Women have found ways to prevent pregnancies and abort fetuses or babies, as you wish. What I would prefer to look at, though, is something that Senator Bouchard stated, where the reasons given by most women, according to his survey, was for size of family, education, jobs, and such. I present a challenge to all of our society. Find a way to make it so that women can safely deliver their children, can have their education, their jobs, and not have to have an elective abortion. Let's work towards that as a society instead of this debate as to whether an elective abortion via either chemical or medical procedures is needed. We as a society can prevent this without having to go and continue to divide this country if we try to work together for the solutions to the problems that make these women go for the abortions. I am pro-choice and I am for the doctors, but I challenge our governments and our society to find the ways so that we cannot have to worry about this.
Thank you. Questions, committee? Thank you very much. Go ahead, ma'am. Jump right in. You're up. You're up.
Chair, committee, thank you for your time and careful consideration on this important and very sensitive, obviously, matter. It's always troubling to me that these arguments are framed in pro-women versus pro-life. I feel that although I'm here very much against this bill, my entire adult life has been centered around trying to keep children very much alive and well, 4 of them. I began my motherhood journey with an unplanned pregnancy at 18 years old and became a mother at 19. Although unplanned, I chose to continue with the pregnancy, became a mother very young. I was very privileged to have community and a family full of supportive people. And still, even with all of that support, my family struggled in poverty for over a decade. The bottom line is we do not have adequate support for underprivileged families. Having had the choice and knowing intimately the ramifications mentally, physically, financially of child rearing before you are ready, I can say with confidence, forcing someone to do so is incredibly dangerous. I wanted to end real briefly just to talk about belief a little bit, as Senator Bouchard expressed concern for respecting people's religious beliefs. The core argument around this debate is a matter of belief, right? The belief of when a life begins. And when it comes down to it, that belief varies from person to person, from religion to religion. And the only way to respect everyone's belief is by maintaining access to abortion care. Personally, you are free to teach and preach whatever you choose in your home and at your pulpit, and I support everybody's right to do so. But I believe, as someone who attends church every Sunday, as someone who has experienced the miracle of pregnancy and bringing 4 lives into this world, I believe personally, spiritually, that a life does not begin at conception. I believe it is much more nuanced than that, and I believe that is between me and my God. You're welcome to disagree. I respect your beliefs. You're welcome to pray for me. But please do not infringe on my beliefs with yours. Thank you. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Superloaf.
Hey.
Got you. Thank you very much.
That's an easy question.
That was easy.
That's me.
Thank you
We go
very
way
much
back.
for your testimony. Seen a little bit of a break in people jumping up here. We're going to switch to online. I will tell you that sometime in the next 20 minutes, I'd like to terminate this and bring this to committee to bring it to a vote. And I apologize to Senator McEwen. We probably won't get to your bill until Friday. But we will get it. So let's switch to online. Let's bring two people in that are supportive of the bill if we can. If they can raise their hand, all those who are in support of the bill, we'll bring two in. And I remind you to try to keep your testimony brief. We'll stop testimony in about 20 minutes, if not before, so we can vote on it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if those online in support would raise their hand, I can admit two.
So get the hand raised so we can get you on.
Mr. Chairman, do you only want Wyoming people in support? to be
Wyoming,
admitted?
please.
Okay, I have one Wyoming person in support with their
Okay,
hand
go
up.
ahead and admit.
Mr. Chairman, I've admitted Bob Brechtel. He needs to turn on his audio and video.
Mr. Brechtel, if you can hear us, if you can turn on your audio and video. we're ready.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Bob Brechtel from Evansville, Wyoming. Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of Senate File 109. Alliance Defense Freedom filed a suit in Texas federal court recently asking the question about the repeatedly removing even the most basic precautionary requirements concerning women's safety of the abortion pill. Because of the deaths directly attributed to the abortion pill and because of seemingly thousands of injuries caused since 2000, the abortion pill to me seems to be proven unsafe for women. And it's not a good replacement for a woman's doctor who can accurately diagnose and treat potentially serious issues that a technician over a video conference, for example, cannot. The focus of killing the baby in the mother's womb should not be a primary focus of healthcare. That abortion is not healthcare. Treating the woman to preserve life and health does not call for a first priority to the killing of her child, but sometimes the baby dies as a result of a procedure. This is not the intent and therefore is not abortion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brechtel. Questions for Mr. Brechtel? Seeing none, sir. Thank you very much for coming to visit us today. Do we have anyone else online?
Mr. Chairman, that was the only person from Wyoming that raised their hand.
Okay, let's hear
in
some
support.
opposition from Wyoming,
Okay.
please.
Mr. Chairman, I've admitted two
Okay.
in opposition.
And I see you one. Ma'am, if you can hear me, go ahead and activate your audio and we see your visual. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Mead, Mr. Chairman Baldwin and committee members. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and fourth generation rancher here in Jackson. And I practiced law in Wyoming in my community for 36 years. My testimony is in opposition to Senate File 109. Article 1, Section 38 of our Constitution, which was passed by the voters of Wyoming in 2012, says, and I quote, each competent adult shall have the right to make his or her own health care decisions. Doesn't exclude women, doesn't exclude pregnant women. It's quite simple. In 2012, our community, our state determined that we didn't want government involved in our healthcare decisions. Now, because it's not really easy to argue that women aren't competent adults, the argument has gone to, well, abortion is not a healthcare decision. You've heard today from several medical doctors who say, indeed, it is. When our Wyoming citizenry voted in 2012 to keep the government out of our healthcare decisions, they did so with full knowledge that abortion was legal in our state at that time. Abortion still is legal in our state and will be until a court decision concludes otherwise. But in light of our Constitution, this is not a rule. It's not even legislation. It's our Constitution. It gives every one of us the right to choose our own healthcare decisions. I would urge you to oppose this action. Article 1, Section 38 also provides that if the legislature can make reasonable and necessary provisions to enforce this law. But it also says that the state of Wyoming shall act to preserve these rights from undue governmental infringement. Passage of this legislation will be undue governmental infringement, and I would urge you not to pass it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mead. Questions for Ms. Mead, committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Do we have anyone else admitted?
Yes, Chairman, I admitted Dr. Anthony.
Go ahead, ma'am. We see your face. Go ahead and speak to us.
Thank you, Chairman Baldwin and committee members for the opportunity to speak. I will try to keep it brief. My name is Jovanina Anthony. I practice OBGYN for the last 30 years, 18 years of this here in Jackson, Wyoming. I vigorously and absolutely oppose Senate File 109. I start by saying I've spent my life caring for pregnant women, and my job and passion is to serve the women of this state. I am not going to discuss the emotional aspects of abortion care. My objection is to making these medications illegal, much as many of the other physicians have testified. If Senate File 109 passes, this will truly be a crisis in the practice of obstetrics and gynecology, and this has nothing to do with elective abortion. Senate File 109 does make an exception for management of miscarriage, but the reality of banning and criminalizing these drugs is they will not be available, especially misoprostol. I use this medication literally every day. A partial list of uses of this medicine other than medical abortion include cervical ripening prior to induction of labor, management of postpartum hemorrhage, cervical dilation prior to hysteroscopic procedures in non-pregnant women, cervical dilation prior to IUD placement, induction of labor during the second trimester in the event of fetal death, and on and on. How will a pharmacist, whether hospital-based or outpatient, know that this prescription is not for medical abortion purposes? How will healthcare providers unfamiliar with abortion law know that they won't go to jail if they use it to ripen the cervix or use it for IUD placement? Really, who is going to take a chance on going to jail with a felony charge if we need to use this medication? A lot of emergent situations occur, as one of the other physicians testified, in the middle of the night. When are we going to argue with the hospital pharmacist? There are no lawyers, ethical boards, or legislators available in the middle of the night to discuss the legality of the usage of this medicine. This bill will further create confusion because misoprostol especially is a key component, though of medical abortion. We use this all the time, as I've mentioned, for other purposes. And my concern is that we will have a lot of trouble obtaining obtaining misoprostol for legal usage when the prescription and use of the medicine is criminalized. I urge this committee to reject and oppose Senate File 109 on this basis. And I thank you, Chairman Baldwin and committee members, for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. Questions for Dr. Anthony? Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the bill says in it, it's only for the purpose of performing an abortion. It doesn't outlaw any other use. Did you read the bill, and can you see that in the bill?
Yes, I did read the bill. So for example, if I need to prescribe misoprostol to place an IUD, I will send a prescription in to a pharmacist to have this patient able to go and pick up that medication in a pharmacy. If the pharmacist is aware that it cannot be used for elective abortion, I suppose they can call and ask me what it's used for, but don't you think that that would really provide a chilling effect? If I tell that pharmacist, oh, we're not using that for elective abortion, I really have a hard time believing they'll just be like, oh, okay, here you go, here it is, when that is a potential felony charge with a prison sentence and a fine.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Anthony.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, we have 4 more Wyoming participants, I believe, all in opposition. Would you like me to admit?
Let's hear those, and then we'll close public testimony. If you've been invited in, please activate your audio and video so we can get you on.
Hello, Hello, can you hear me? Hello? That's enabled. I'm just going to go for it here. This is Christine Lichtenfels, and I'm in Lander, Wyoming. I'm a practicing attorney, and I'm speaking in opposition to Senate File 109. In response to the some people suggesting that medication abortion is unsafe, I want to present to you the mifepristone U.S. post-marketing adverse event summary from the FDA, which found that it is very safe, and the percentage of any deaths is 0.00064%, which is tiny. Penicillin has a mortality rate significantly more than that. Likewise, Viagra. Even hip replacement is many more times likely to result in death, and I don't see the legislature trying to regulate hip replacement. So safety of women does not support passing this bill. I want to also mention, since there was some mention of how terrible this is for women, I have had an abortion, and in fact, like studies have shown that 95% of women, their predominant emotion after an abortion, and this is true for 5 years after and decades after, is relief. And that is in fact the case. Relief is the predominant emotion that I experienced. I will also mention that the exception to prosecution for the woman taking the drugs in this bill is, I believe, illusory. It talks about only when a woman takes, when a woman upon whom an abortion is performed or attempted, in which a chemical abortion drug is used. An abortion is not performed upon her. She actually takes the pills herself. So someone could easily, an aggressive prosecutor could easily say, no, she did it herself, so that part doesn't apply. Moreover, it actually, Section D limits it, shall not be used to criminally prosecute her pursuant to subsection C of this section. However, it does not exempt prosecution under the other portions of Chapter 6, which in fact do include the woman herself as being subject to prosecution and for up to 14 years. So I believe that this supposed exemption would not necessarily be effective in exempting a woman who, on her own initiative, even with a physician's prescription, takes the medication abortion pill. So I'm very concerned about that. And I guess I'll close. I do have worries about exempting the psychological and emotional conditions. I believe those might well, I fear it's done in part because there's lack of trust of women or physicians. And also it is probably because of the complexity of some of the abortion situations that people face. In fact, I have multiple times spoken with people who have said, this is in my capacity as a phone volunteer for Chelsea's Fund, where they said, oh, I don't believe in abortion, but in this case, it's correct. And that's true. These are complex situations when people face it, and it is best done by individuals. Wyoming values have always included independence, privacy, and freedom from governmental control. Forcing a woman to carry a pregnancy to term is an overreach by the government. This is not where the legislature should step in. And in fact, the legislature has had it right before when it was legislating family planning and contraception in Wyoming Statute 42.5, 102, where it said 42.5, 101 shall not be interpreted to interfere with a person's religious beliefs, and we've heard lots of discussion of people's religious beliefs here, nor shall it restrict self-determination in the procreation. Hello?
Hello?